Of social media, while you go and vote, maybe give this some thought and tell us if this has ever happened to you. Maybe you've noticed it, maybe you haven't, but if not, you're probably going to be a lot more aware of defamation claims and disputes on social media. Whether it's Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, whatever it might be, social media has become a platform for you to be able to broadcast your thoughts. But the problem is, those thoughts are going out to a wider audience. So, is there a big difference between offending someone, being critical of someone on social media, and then defaming them? Well, let's bring in to the conversation Director of Employment Law at Cliff Decker Hofmeyer, Pattani Nkuna, joining us this morning. Pattani, good morning. I appreciate your time. Thanks very, very much. Can we just start here, if we don't mind, the definition of defamation? Because I remember this before I fell out of law school, a two-prong test.
Yes, so really, in summary, the definition is a statement that is made publicly with the intention to harm or damage someone's good name or reputation. It's also been extended to say that it is a statement that injures a person to whom it is made or referred to whom it refers to, rather, by lowering how they are esteemed by the reasonable or ordinary member of society. So, in summary, that's the definition of defamation.
So, when we take that original definition of social media, Pattani, and we then look at the definition of defamation, and we apply that to social media, can we directly apply it in ordinary fashion?
You can, and this is why. So, the test on whether something is defamatory or not is really an objective one. And what that means is whether a reasonable person of ordinary intelligence would have found that to have been defaming, so to say. You look at not just the express meaning of something, but also the implied meaning of that statement. You also look or consider the circumstances around which a certain statement was made. You referenced earlier the two-pronged approach. Firstly, you interpret the meaning of the statement, and then you answer the question, was it defamatory or not? Again, you look at what I said earlier, the objective test from a reasonable person's perspective. And I think it's important to mention what would be a reasonable person in this instance. It's not somebody who's overly critical. Some of our courts have said that it's not someone who is of morbid or suspicious mind, nor are they super critical or abnormally sensitive. So it's really somebody who is ordinary, somebody who's reasonable.
So once again, we have to apply a myriad of tests in a case like this. Just to bring viewers into why we're talking about this, this was back in 2019. Former President Jacob Zuma called ANC veteran Derek Hanekom a known enemy agent. Hanekom, just as I jump ahead then, won that defamation suit against Zuma, who was forced to apologize, of course. And that leads me to my next question as well. Recognized defenses and also what sort of recourse is there for someone that feels they've been defamed? How do the courts generally view a defense like that?
Okay, so the key elements of the offense of defamation is it has to be wrongful, done intentionally. There's the publication element. Obviously, if it's just a thought in your head, it doesn't suffice or meets the requirements. And it has to be defamatory and concerns a particular person. Now, to try and escape liability, you need to establish that it wasn't wrongful. Some of the defenses that you can bring up are that the statement was true. It was made with for the benefit of public interest. It is a fair comment and the facts are true. Again, you can't just slander someone or refer to false information. So your comment should have truthfulness in it. And you can also use the defense of reasonable publication. Now, on to recourse available to you. We've seen it play out from political arena to the social media space, influencers suing each other. You can bring a civil damages claim against the publisher of that particular comment.
So now I suppose we have to have the question answered when it comes to freedom of speech, because we'll see many, many people who still believe this is some kind of defense. They have a proviso at the top of their Twitter account or Facebook page saying, my views are my own. My opinion on this is if your views are your own, keep it to yourself. No opinion that you publish is your own opinion. So where does freedom of speech sit within this framework?
You may have that constitutional right to freedom of speech to express yourself about different topics as they play out in society. However, the Constitution also provides for limitation of rights. And in this instance, it involves a balancing act between the freedom of expression as well as protecting somebody's dignity, which the Constitution clearly says that it's one of the founding values of the democratic state of South Africa. So whilst you may be able to express yourself, the question is, what is the impact of that on somebody's dignity? Dignity also considers things like somebody's reputation. Somebody in this age, there's a lot of talk or a lot of advocacy around mental health, somebody's well-being as well. How does that impact their dignity insofar as some of those aspects are concerned?
And just finally, as well, as a employment law specialist at Cliff Decker Hofmeyr, I imagine this one is right up your alley. I want to end off by asking what many employers and what many employees have been fighting about for years. So let me ask you this. So what recourse does an employer have against an employee who may say something, let's call it unsavory or unfavorable, on Twitter about the company they work for? This gets very messy, doesn't it? People lose their jobs over this.
So in addition to the civil damages claim that you can bring, I must also mention that in some instances, what you publish on social media can amount to a violation of the Cybercrimes Act. So you may attract criminal liability as well. As between employer and employee, an employee's good name is very important. It attracts business, it impacts turnover, revenue, goodwill, customers. So to the extent that you find yourself having to deal with this between employer and employee, somebody can actually be disciplined and even dismissed for bringing an employer into disrepute. Harming your employer's good name or their interest can be a dismissible offense. Obviously, you consider the circumstances surrounding that particular act of misconduct.
And it has happened too many times in South Africa as well. I suppose in the end, make sure that you understand what your company's social media policies are. But I suppose in the end, common sense, isn't it? Common sense is what it all comes down to. Pateni, thank you so much.
True.
Exactly, Pateni agreeing as well. It's just common sense as well. If you probably won't say it to that person to their face, and you won't say it to your CEO or to your boss, you probably shouldn't be tweeting it or posting it on Facebook. My thanks to Director of Employment Law at Cliff Decker Hofmeyr, Pateni Nkuna.